When I first moved to Canada, I settled in Edmonton, Alberta. After living there for 2 years, I decided to move out to Vancouver in British Columbia, which is dubbed the most unaffordable city in Canada. Why did I decide to make this move? In this video, I am going to share with you the reasons behind my decision. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Fabi, and on this channel I share stories and lessons from my non-linear life journey to help you embrace your own journey and feel less alone in the process. So as I mentioned in this video, I want to share the reasons why I decided to move from Edmonton to Vancouver, and I'll break out this video into 3 parts. We'll start with a little bit of a background story, and then we'll move on to my 4 reasons why I decided to make that move, and then we'll wrap up with closing thoughts. A little bit of a background story for me. If you don't know already, I moved from Singapore to Canada in 2019, which is close to 5 years ago. And the first city that I settled in was Edmonton. I went to school there for 2 years. I did my graduate degree there. And after living there for 2 years, I decided to move out to Vancouver. And so it has been almost 3 years since I first moved to Vancouver. I've been living here for close to 3 years now. So that's a little bit of a background story, and now let's move on to the 4 reasons why I decided to move to Vancouver. The first one is the nature. It is just indescribably beautiful. Mountains, beaches, parks, you name it, all in one place. If you're outdoorsy and you appreciate nature, I think you'll love Vancouver. I remember when I was still living in Asia, or Singapore in particular, I would have to use my annual leave to go somewhere that is close to or comparable to what Canada or the West Coast in Canada has to offer. And I would go to places like New Zealand or Tasmania in Australia to really experience the nature that I was looking for. I felt that the trip was worthwhile. So yes, I'm personally the type of person who likes being in nature. It makes me feel grounded, present, and small in a good way. And now that I live in Vancouver, I really appreciate just how a random drive to a grocery store, for example, that gives me like a mountain view covered with snow, which I found so beautiful. I always feel grateful for living here every time I see such view, or even when I just want to clear my head or just want to take a break from my work, I can just do a quick run. And this is the kind of view that I would get just 5 minutes drive away from my house, which I find amazing. And I feel like there's always something to do in different seasons. For example, in the summer, you can obviously go hiking, camping, paddleboarding, you name it. And in the winter, we have so many amazing mountains that you can go to. And then the second one is milder winter. I mean, how can we even talk about Canada without talking about the weather? I know, it's such a classic topic, and it's such a somewhat boring topic that people overuse to make small talks, but trust me, if you live in a 4-season country where the contrast is stark, you would genuinely care about the weather. Well, at least I do. Like, maybe not necessarily for a small talk topic, but I do genuinely care about the weather, and I do check my weather app pretty much on a daily basis to see what kind of weather I would get today. And so milder winter is definitely something that Vancouver boasts as compared to other Canadian cities, or even British Columbia, which is the province where Vancouver is located, has an advantage over versus other Canadian provinces. Because if I were to compare with Edmonton, which is again located in Alberta, Edmonton is cold, like cold in caps lock, bolded, underlined. It's like cold. And it's cold 6 months out of 12 months in a year. And when I say cold, it's like it can go down to like minus 47 degrees Celsius. And I also talk a little bit about Edmonton in a video where I talk about the reasons why I chose to move to one of the coldest cities in the world in this video. So you can also check out that video if you're curious to learn more about Edmonton. Whereas in Vancouver, the winter is definitely milder. But the good thing about Edmonton is it has a lot of sunshine. So even though it's freaking cold, but I feel like people wouldn't get as depressed despite the cold, because you would still see a lot of sun in Edmonton. Whereas in Vancouver, it rains a lot. Like, Vancouver is called Vancouver for a reason. And it does rain 169 days out of 365 days a year, which brings us to 46% of the total days that we have in a year. And so that's a lot of rain, and that is why when it rains, the rain sometimes just stays throughout the entire day, and it gets really tough to actually truly enjoy the city and what it has to offer. So I feel like for this particular point, it's more like you gotta pick your battles, like rain or snow. What do you prefer? What do you think you can deal with better? I think that is what it is at the end of the day. And then the third reason is diverse food options. Growing up in Asia, I literally live for good food. Good food is such an integral part of my life, and something that I really appreciate about Vancouver is like the food scene is so diverse. Like whatever you want, most likely you can find it here in Vancouver. This might be a bit subjective because I know that Vancouver has such a strong Asian influence, and for me growing up in Asia, obviously I have a lot of knowledge about Asian food and diverse Asian cuisines, and I find it pretty easy to find this in Vancouver. For example, if I were to choose one food that I needed to eat for the rest of my life, it would be sushi. And in Vancouver, like Vancouver is the sushi capital of North America for a reason, because you could literally find sushi place one every few blocks, and it is insane. It is maybe like similar to Family Mart in Japan, where you can just find like one Family Mart or one 7-Eleven every few blocks. It is insane. The sushi place we have here is that many. Aside from sushi, there's also a lot more options when it comes to food, such as all of these places in Vancouver. Whereas in Edmonton, I think the food options is definitely more limited as compared to Vancouver. I remember when I was living in Edmonton, I tried so hard to find a good ramen, and there was one ramen shop that was pretty highly rated, but then it didn't really live up to my expectations in that sense. That being said, I do think that this also comes down to the size of ethnic community or diverse community that you have in a city, because that definitely influences the diversity of food options that you would have depending on the multiculturalism or how multicultural the city is. Edmonton, I will say, is pretty multicultural, but I do think that when it comes to the number of ethnicities, I think it is still lower as compared to Vancouver or Toronto. The fourth one is career opportunity. So in my opinion, Edmonton is good for public sector, healthcare, perhaps tech, and maybe education sector as well. And there's nothing good or bad about this. I feel like for me, it all comes down to my personal interest, where I want to take my career, and how that ties to the available opportunity in the city. Any Edmontonians or Albertans who are watching this video, let me know what you think of this one, because I would love to get some perspectives from locals as well. Like I remember talking about this with my local friends when I was still living there, and I think the general consensus is people would agree that these are the sectors that are prominent in the city, and obviously oil and gas too, but it's more like a general Alberta thing, I feel like, and it has died down as well over the last couple of years. Whereas for myself, I knew that I wanted to go back and build a career in brand marketing. I started out in brand marketing, and after flying and getting my MBA degree, I would want to go back and build a career in brand marketing, or in particular at that time in the consumer packaged goods industry. And there wasn't a lot, or I will say there wasn't even any opportunity that is available in Edmonton that was suitable or that matches my interest. I also found it challenging to meet people in a professional setting with similar interests, or maybe people who have career paths that I can look up to and I can learn from. And after doing internships in a tech startup and in a not-for-profit, I figured that Edmonton isn't for me, and I had to move out. When I decided to move out to Vancouver, I sort of lucked out my job search, and I managed to land an offer that is in brand marketing with a company that is one of my top options, so I was able to make that move from Edmonton to Vancouver. And if you're curious about how I managed to pivot from working as a flight attendant to working in the corporate world as a brand marketing or product management, I actually have created a video about that, so you can check that video out if you're interested, and I'll also put the link in the description box down below. Okay friends, that is all I have for today's video. As you can see, it all really comes down to personal preference, and I do think that it also depends on which season you are in life. Will I ever move back to Edmonton or Alberta in general? I mean, never say never. You never know, because Vancouver is definitely not a perfect place. Nowhere is perfect. I think it depends on your priorities and what matters to you and what you're willing to sacrifice. I do think that Vancouver is the place to be for me in this season of life, but things might change, and I don't think Vancouver is a perfect place. And so I want to talk more about life in Vancouver, or maybe like just pros and cons of living in Vancouver in my subsequent videos. So if you think that you can benefit from those videos, or if you're curious to learn more, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any next videos that I post on this channel. And that's all I have for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.